My name's Oliver Gardner and I'm one of the vendor business managers here at IntY. And I mentioned them a minute ago, so I'm delighted to say I'm joined today by both Bourne and Wendy Clifford from Cloud 2020. So good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Morning, Ollie.
So
thanks for having us.
Well, it's my pleasure. And I'm going to come on to you now. So why are Cloud 2020 here again? It's part of a series of webinars that we've been doing since the start of this year, and hopefully everyone has listened to the previous webinars. If not, they are available through our resource portal. But the reason, and I suppose the point of today's webinar, is Wendy, Ian and I recently had a discussion around a common point that's often raised by both partners and end users, and that is we want it in the cloud, but not on the internet. And that got us thinking around a range of ways to answer this question. And it ranges from things like the benefits of moving to the cloud, or allaying fears around trust, security and compliance. So we thought, you know what, this would make a really great discussion point for today's webinar and to continue in the really interesting Cloud 2020 and IntY webinar series. For all of you who are listening today, as an IntY partner, being able to offer your customers the products and services that are available from Cloud 2020, it provides you with the ability to offer strategic and technical advice to your customers, whilst also helping to reduce churn, and provides you as a partner with an additional margin opportunity whilst retaining your 365 base. So I'm really looking forward to hearing the content today and hearing the discussion. It's always, as Wendy said earlier, it's always very entertaining listening to Ian and Wendy and myself chat. However, I do want to point out that, as always on our webinars, we want them to be as interactive as possible. So the Q&A box is open and please use it. Any questions? No question is a silly question. And what we will probably do is address the questions as they become poignant throughout the webinar, throughout today's discussion, and anything that's left over we'll then discuss at the end today. So without further ado, what I'm going to do now is hand over to both Ian and Wendy, and we can start today's discussion.
Brilliant.
Thanks, Ollie. It's always a pleasure doing these webinars with you and with the team at IntY there. You know, great thanks to Kat for organising everything behind the scenes, and Katie on our side. And we wanted to bring this discussion today because this actually came from a real life conversation that I had with a partner who came to me and said, I've got this opportunity. They're currently running CRM on-prem and they know about the cloud, but they want it in the cloud, but they don't want it on the internet. And I thought, what a fabulous phrase that is, because I knew exactly what he meant, even though it sounds like a bit of an oxymoron, doesn't it? I mean, and there are a number of ways, we know there are a number of ways to have your Dynamics 365 sales or customer service instance in the cloud and not make it accessible on the, we know it isn't accessible on the internet to anybody that isn't logged in or signed in or has the correct security roles, but perception is all, isn't it? So it's making that move, making that jump. We know that's difficult for some organizations, so we just wanted to have a bit of a chat about, you know, perhaps some new ways to think about that, really, because we don't think leaving it where it is on-prem is without its risks. So if somebody's concerned about risk, we really want them to think about how being in the cloud actually mitigates the risk that they're already experiencing that they might not be aware of. So Ian, you and I, we've had a lot of conversations about this, haven't we?
We did, and I must admit, when you first mentioned this conversation, it floored me. It's like, it was so far away from where you and I think on a daily basis. I want it in the cloud, but not on the internet. And we had to unpack it really to really understand it. And more importantly, to understand what was underlying that comment. So it has to be around confidence, trust, obviously there's understanding in there. Yeah, I get all that. But it was really, I'm really happy with what I've got. It sits on that box in the corner with all those flashing lights on it. I understand it, it's great, and it's doing well so far. Now I'm being told, almost pressurized to say I've got to move to the cloud. So fine, just put that in the cloud. That's not really the way ahead. But so really importantly was It's that I understand it, I've got comfort in it, it's not let me down so far, but that actual fact is a false hope. It's as we all know, you know, I remember a little story once where I was talking to a customer, and he said he wants some dynamics and what have you. And I said, well, what are you doing for your mailboxes at the moment? Oh, they're on the server. Oh, yeah, where's the server? It's in the corner. All right. And this guy had 5 companies running off one server in the corner that was 5 years old. I said, right, look, before we take another step forward, let's find you a partner that can move those into the cloud. Because the next time the cleaner bangs out with a hoover and that stops running, you've got 5 businesses effectively off the map. So, you know, before we do anything clever with Dynamics, let's get the basics under control. But you know, reverting back to this comment. So what we need to get people to understand is, first of all, yes, let's get you into the cloud, but we need to unpack the next stage, which is don't at this point just go, we'll just move that Dynamics in our case into the cloud, because that really isn't a step forward. It's a good step, but it's not the whole step, and that is where we need to get the confidence across. And I mean, obviously it's quite obvious to us, and I'm sure to most partners listening now, but you know, the risk is much higher where it is now, even though there's a comfort in there. The risk is perceived occasionally by the customer as going, well, hang on a minute, I've got to trust you guys and girls to move my platform into somewhere where I can't see it, controlled and managed by some massive organization called Microsoft that I have no control over and can't pick the phone up to, and you're telling me that's a good thing. Yes, I am telling you that's a really good thing. It's a really good thing. Now let's sit down and discuss why, you know. Let's talk about security. How much you spent on security last year? Oh, we bought a bit of software. Yeah. Didn't spend $1 billion, did you, on security? So come on, let's get with the show here. Let's get with the program. So I'm sure you know, it still comes as a surprise to us that people haven't understood the core underlying advantages of moving to the cloud. But I understand why. That, you know, business as usual, everything's fine. Why should I trust you? And everything goes around that to make this move. It was good. It was an interesting initial conversation, Wendy, wasn't it?
It really was. And I think this whole idea about, well, I can see my server in the corner there, and as you say, the next time the cleaner bangs it with the hoover, it could be dead. You know, you both know that I come from the dark side. I was in the world of supplying servers to people, and Windows Server, and even small business server. And the thing about running you know, your critical software on an old machine is, when you come in and the power doesn't turn on, the scramble to find a power supply that fits an old motherboard that is more than 2 or 3 years old is incredible. And you would not think that that would be a problem, but it really is, to the point where we used to keep replacement power supplies in office for specific outdated motherboards, but you run out of those eventually. You can't get them anymore, or you can't get them for a price that's meaningful for a 5-year-old machine, you know. So there's a risk there. And the other thing is, we're backing up. Well, where are you backing up to? Well, in the days of tapes, I could guarantee you that nobody was changing that tape, apart from high days and holidays when somebody reminded them to. And so not only that, you had all your data, but you didn't have your software, you know. So you know, the moving of all of that to the cloud allies all of those risks. And it's an expensive job. You know, a data recovery, a disaster recovery for an on-prem machine is an expensive job. And I think most people aren't factoring that into their costs when they're thinking about this. And I think the other thing is, I don't know, this might be a little controversial, and, you know, you're not surprised, Ian, when I say this. There's possibly some reasons why IT resellers and managed service providers actually want to keep it like that, because it provides income and keeps them in business. But we're saying here, there's more income to make if you enable people to move to the cloud. So there's a couple of risks there. We're talking about the risks, perceived risks from the partner side. Am I going to lose some valuable income because I'm going to encourage my customers to move to the cloud? Will they still need me? The answer to that is yes, absolutely. More. They'll need you more. And then from the customer side, I've got this thing sitting in the corner. We all know what it is, and occasionally so-and-so from accounts goes in and works on Sage on it. You know, that's a disaster waiting to happen as well. So we know that there's risks around there. We just need to get this message across about the trust, the security, the compliance that is built in to the cloud already, you know, and it's available to you. But I suppose, are we still having the conversation about moving from CapEx to a subscription base?
No. We are. I had it literally a few days ago. It's still out there.
Okay.
And I really wanted to bring it in at this point, actually, because we talked about, okay, if we can convince this mythical person that's still using an on-prem server, what have you, that that's not a good idea, they need to move that cloud, that's fine. One of the other objections is cost. They go, oh, well, look how much it's going to cost me. Hang on, you're not really doing this a proper service. You're not doing it proper justice, because, and some of the benefits you've already mentioned, you're not having to back up, you're not having to replace the software, you're not having to replace the server, you're not employing people to sit there all day and all night making sure the lights are on. Somebody else is doing that. And if you really add all that up, you're not going to worry about a disaster recovery plan or data recovery. It's happening. Somebody else is dealing with that. When that server's at end of life, you've no idea. Somebody sorted it out. Some magic bit of software in an operations room somewhere has gone, it's time to move that data now, and you have no, it just happened, right? So there's a huge amount of cost, which if you are running your platform properly yourself, are being masked in that subscription. Now, the other advantage, of course, is you can switch it on, switch it off. So, you know, if you've got a seasonal variance in employees, and you want to bring in 50 people for a campaign or something, light up 50 people. When you finish, turn them off. Not an issue, you know? You're not having to build. There's a great graph out there that shows the cost and the capacity needed to run an organization, and it's at the peak. And you've got to get a peak, and you've got to build for peaks. Not if you're in the cloud, because the requirement on the server is managed by somebody else, and you're paying for what you use, not for that peak capacity. It's a big issue. So I think I'd like to put costs on the table and go, it might look expensive, but I'll tell you now, it is not. You're actually going to save money, but have a better environment and platform and security and maintenance and disaster recovery than you could possibly afford if you did it on the prem. So that's my end of discussion, right? What I'd like to move on from then is, we're talking about trust. We talk about almost, you know, that comfort factor of being able to see it and then move it. Let's get on to the real issue here, which is then, don't just take what you've got and move it. This is an opportunity now to move from a static environment into a really, excuse the term, dynamics, you know, meant to be a pun, but put it now onto a platform that is moving forward at least twice a year in a really positive way, without you again having to do any updates or any additional costs or anything. Let's have that discussion next.
Absolutely. I think I can hear your passion there, Ian, because obviously you and I we've been around this a long time. I remember, you know, in your first iteration of Cloud 2020, moving into the Office 365 world, which we don't do now, and having to convince people and going around on a roadshow and showing people how it worked. And I remember even myself in a technology role was kind of going, well, what happens if my broadband's rubbish? You know, because at that time that was an issue, and it felt like it was an issue. I just didn't really understand. I could not make that leap from what I already knew, those boxes that sat on a shelf somewhere that was, you know, my latest version of Office, which didn't get updated very often, and you bought one with a new PC, for example. The advantages now of running the right version to do whatever, and all these constant updates, all the brilliant stuff you've got in PowerPoint, the design options, all of those things. If in that world, I think Office 365 is already, there's a case already made. We just need to make the case for running your CRM software, as the old-fashioned term is CRM. You know, we call it Dynamics 365 Sales and Marketing, essentially. And your customer service platform, we need to make the case for that being better to be dynamic as well. And I think the point that I want to make here is our reliance on technology is not going to get less, you know, not as a business, not as a person, not as a country, not as a world, actually. So moving into the latest ways in which we can work has to be a better solution for all of us. There are power benefits, you know, that's an environmental benefit as well for us all. So I think it's a wider subject than just sitting talking about that computer in the corner, that server in the corner, but that's where it starts, isn't it?
Yeah. I try to look back slightly because I absolutely pick up your point, but this case in point where we're working with a customer and we had that discussion with the CFO that said, well, okay, we decided to move forward now. We're going to get off the 5-year-old servers in the data center with the out-of-date server software and the out-of-date dynamic software, and we're going to move it to the cloud. Yeah, fine. I think we should go and buy licenses and do an on-prem but in the cloud. We had that discussion. He was just truly discounting the software over 5 years and saying that it was a good thing. We finally, and luckily we had an IT director there who was just, you know, on board. He was not worried about keeping lights on anymore. That is not his job. He wanted to be much more strategic. He just said, you're not listening, CFO, we're going cloud. But I can discount. No. We are going cloud. Because if we go cloud, my team and I can really work with you then to move this forward. Now, they had an on-prem, on data center dynamics, and there's some quite complex requirements, and they wanted to move it. So they wanted us to take that and replicate it, and we actually refused. We said, no, we're not doing it. There were 254 changes to that core platform, and when we looked at it, most of which were now done by the platform anyway, because the whole platform had moved forward so much, and that was sat back in a time stamp in history somewhere. So very often, you know, so if you are in a situation where we're going to move one of your clients from an on-prem to cloud, it's a superb opportunity to do two things. One is spring clean their data, right?
Yes.
Have a really good look at that data and go, hang on, do we really need a contact 5 years old we've never spoken to in the first place? No, have a sweep out of that, right? But then more importantly, what is it, never mind what it did, now, today, what does it want to do? Because if you start now, I guarantee in 18 months' time, your business will have moved and you'll want to move the platform forward as well. But don't bring all that rubbish with you. Let's have a look now what you want to do. Let's learn from the best bits of what you had before, but ignore the rest.
Absolutely. And I think what's important there is to say, don't lose the opportunity because of the fear of losing where you've already got to, because you aren't going to be doing that. I can see that Ian's potentially having problems with his connection there, but Ollie, I think you and I are still on board here, aren't we? So when we're talking about this, I think we need to understand that it should be dynamics. Dynamics should be dynamic. It should be changing. We should be making sure that we can offer something that can actually, if it does its job properly, it's pushing your business forward. So it will need changes going forward as well, and that should be at a benefit for your company too. So Ollie, I'm just wondering, have you much experience of this with the, you know, a requirement coming through from your partners there?
I think you raised a really valid point slightly earlier, Wendy, when a lot of our partners listening today probably would have had these conversations around moving from on-prem servers to Office 365 or now Microsoft 365 3 or 4 years ago. And now actually those conversations are had very easily, and customers are expecting it. They're expecting that their Office apps will be hosted in the cloud and they can access them from a variety of different devices. When it comes to CRM, a lot of businesses out there are still used to having that server, and there's still the trepidation. If anything, it almost feels like, from conversations I have with some of our partners, that those conversations are a couple of years behind still.
Yes.
And it's about speaking to customers about the value of moving CRM through Dynamics 365 into the cloud and what that offers you. Something that is always accessible, something that's always updated, something that is infinitely scalable. All of those options, which are limitations through on-prem setups, all of a sudden through the cloud, there's this big opportunity. Ian said about, if you look at, if you're taking on seasonal workers, then a lot of businesses will do that. If we reflect what's happened in the last 18 months, how workforces have been furloughed, for example, now people are potentially coming back into the office. The demand for users on CRM will suddenly grow exponentially. And so when you're in the cloud, a product like Dynamics 365 that addresses all of those potential pitfalls.
It does. And I think, it is that question about making sure that you are comparing apples with apples when you do that assessment from a financial point of view. But I think so on top of that, there's the other ways in which this works for you as a company. As you say, remote access isn't a problem. As you say, that scalability is flexing and scaling is absolutely built into the platform, and that's what we want. The other part of this is that actually what you're doing is providing an environment that will allow you to attract the best applicants that are out there as well. Because I can see Ian's just waiting to come back in. I'll let him in again. Hi.
Sorry about that. Somebody got kicked out. I was in mid-flow as well, mid-passion.
Yeah, you did actually have a bit of an action pose as you finished, which was fantastic. Oh. Unfortunately, you're now stuck holding your nose. Oh no, you're back in play now. So we were just talking about, we reckon that the conversation around servers and Dynamics 365 is possibly where 2 or 3 years behind the conversation around Office 365, which is why we want to raise it today. But I think there's also that looking forwards thing. We know that, for example, InsurTech, there is a perception around insurance as being a bit stuffy and a bit old-fashioned. Apologies to any partners there that work in the insurance industry, but it's been well researched and documented. And actually, one of the things that the insurance business is struggling with now is attracting, younger people who are used to using apps on their phone. They're used to being able to access data whenever, wherever they want, and not to be having to go into a certain place to sit at a desk to get to the data they need to do their job. So I do think that this conversation about moving into the cloud in terms of salespeople, Dynamics 365 or customer service people, there is an argument that says if you want the best, you've got to provide the best infrastructure. And this is very definitely the best infrastructure.
I had a fantastic conversation with a CFO of a large haulage company the other day. And they were having a board meeting to decide how many days a week they would ask people to go back into the office post-COVID, right? And he wanted to do 3 days at home, 2 days at work. He thought it was going to go 3 and 2. When they got to the board meeting, they said, well, the answer's 5. And he said, I'm telling you now, customer service, finance and marketing, I know if you insist on 5 days, we'll probably lose half our staff because they no longer feel that need anymore. Some have even moved home recently to a place they want to live in because they've proved they don't need to be in the office. And I think that's a really fascinating outcome of the recent pandemic, actually. As we know, we no longer is geography a boundary to recruitment or losing people to other competitors. So it is about having that accessibility. I think also in terms of accessibility, I think it's an enabler as well, because it just means different people under different circumstances, whatever that might be, can now be employed by you to do good work. And I think that's positive, a real positive outcome of what we learned recently. But it relies on you having the good business applications in the background to support that, along with teams, all that really good stuff to have the collaboration and feel part of the team.
Yes, absolutely. I think, a lot of people may well be, some of the partners out there are offering hosted desktop, things like that, and they're saying, well, why would we break that? Why do we need to do that? That's a good source of income for us, you know. And this customers, their perception is that if they have their data, their information up there in the cloud, it's on the internet and is liable for access by other people that you don't want to get there. And I guess to counter that, I would say actually the biggest security risks we see are ransomware on servers that are running out of date software, out of security patch software, and they are the real risks, not something that's running in a hosted center by Microsoft with military grade security, you know. I think, but perception is all, isn't it? So we just have to keep banging that drum in particular, I think. But I think it's very important that that businesses are looking forward to not, and I guess the pandemic has really brought this up into full vision. It needs to be run around what works for the employees as well as what the employers want. And we've seen that.
I think if I could pick up on that, at the beginning of the pandemic, there was this massive sudden rush for people to get into the cloud, right? Because, and that was the basics. People need a desktop, they need to be able to speak to people, they need Teams, they need a phone of some sort, and they need to be operating from their dining room table. Fine, that happens. What we've noticed actually is those people who perhaps were thinking about the digital transformation journey and suddenly it hit them like an express train, suddenly then also went, do you know what? This works. Now, you know, right back to the beginning of the conversation, you know, a few minutes ago, we talked about this movement and trust, what have you. Those that got banged on the head with this and impacted and they had to move, and then went, a lot of them are going, that really quite works. Okay, what else can we do then? You know,
Yeah.
and it's built a thirst for understanding what else is possible to do. And of course, that brings us right into then business applications. Whether that's sales, customer service, field service, project service, HR, asset management, whatever it is, it's there. And again, we had a lovely call during the week where we were discussing with a customer. We finished 3 projects with them, having a good chat with them. How did it go? Brilliant, yes. Have you thought where this is going to take you? And they went, well, our perception now is whatever we've got, if it's not on Dynamics, why isn't it on Dynamics, and when is it on the roadmap? And that was really powerful. It's like they had got the message and they'd seen there had been some reticence from some of the senior management, some of the board, but they've seen the impact now. They've seen the numbers, they've seen the ROI, you know, and they've gone, okay, big shift of mentality. Right, in that case, if it's not on Dynamics, tell me why not. And not just Dynamics, obviously, but the Power Platform as well now. Which is just, you know, that's an interesting conversation because they almost look at the catalog and go, okay, customer service tick, sales tick, yeah, project management tick, yeah, but hang on, what about X, Y, Z? And you go, what's fine, we'll just do it in Power App, we'll do it on the Power Platform, you know, and it will sit in the same data center, so relax, it's fine. You can do that? Yes, we can. Let's go and scope it. I was doing one the other day, and they wanted to manage management of contracts. Not an issue. Power App, done. Monitoring the contracts. Their contract was never going to expire, go out of date, or be renewed in the timescale of the notice period. And that was putting that in, which didn't take very long, is the potential for compliance issues or financial penalties huge. Now they can relax. It's there, and they can manage it off the dashboard.
Yeah, not to mention the person in charge of compliance and health and safety and signing everything off in danger of going to prison. So that's a
small issue. Small issue. Yeah,
absolutely.
£50,000 personal fine between friends. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Solly, I heard from you saying that you are having conversations with partners about you know, moving from on-prem to the cloud, and I just wondered if it might be worth us chatting a little bit about the offer that is out there from Microsoft with regard to a migration, you know, assessment and some help from Microsoft to move, specifically if you're on AX, which I think you might be considering BC, if that, am I correct in that? moving those two things together. Or if you're running CRM online, for example, or customer service, CRM on-prem or customer service on-prem, you might be considering a move to Dynamics 365 Sales or Customer Service. One of the things that came up during our recent partner call was that there is now a standard migration assessment and followed by a business value insights opportunity available via partners to their customers. You know, it's size agnostic. They just need to be moving from AX or CRM or customer service on-prem, and Microsoft will provide something like a standard assessment followed by a business value insights, which will allow a bit of a roadmap and a discussion, an informed discussion that then can go on between the partner and an organisation like ourselves that might be involved in bringing that project to fruition. So is this something that we can make that information available to your partners, Ollie?
Yes, we'll be. Yeah, definitely. If we'll be able to release that out to the partner base, and I think it's very poignant. Post Inspire, Microsoft see that there's the opportunity there, and the biz app space is a huge area of focus for them as we move into FY22, and so that's backed up by the ability to have an assessment of what you have currently online and what the journey to the cloud will look like. And for any partners listening today, that's a key conversation that we should be involving Cloud 2020 with. So the call to action for you as a partner would be to reach out to your IntY account manager, who will facilitate the introduction to Cloud 2020. We can then go through what the solution assessments look like, and then what the journey will be, what the digital transformation journey to move from that on-premise server potentially into the cloud. Yeah. But yes, to answer your point, Wendy, yes, we can certainly cascade that information out to the base as well.
Sure, and just to mention, there is a bit of a customer time commitment to that, because obviously there'll be some interaction. So it's around between half a day and a day on the first part, which is the standard migration assessment, and then 1 to 2 hours on the business value insights, basically. Sorry, and didn't mean to cut across you there.
No, that's right. I'll just say it's a really good bit of time out though for a business to do this, because it makes you come back and go, hang on a minute, this isn't just about put that in, put that in, put that in, but it's basically saying, well, these are your main pain points, and this is where you're costing money, or this is where you're causing friction for your customers to buy from you, and all that kind of good stuff. And if we take those out, then this will happen and that will happen. So it really gives you very much an insight into the productivity you can gain from an input, putting some stuff in place. But it's very much from that pain point approach and the benefits to you as an organisation. So it's well worth the effort.
Definitely. And I think simply the fact that they're making this offer available corroborates that our point that this conversation is happening now, and it's several years after the Office 365 conversation, which has already happened and it's a no-brainer now. But the conversation now is around business applications and things being in the cloud. And I just wanted to bring it back to our original webinar title, which was we want it in the cloud and not on the internet. I suppose we'd be remiss if we didn't mention, but you can have that, because you can restrict by IP address or specific networks who is able to log in to your solution. But the other thing is to say that nobody can access your solution unless they have a user set up, and they have a username and password, which is in most cases their Office Microsoft 365 login. So unless they have that, then they aren't able to log in. If you're concerned that somebody may be able to gain access to that from somebody who might not be in Office, then you can actually restrict by IP address, and it will not, or device even, using Azure ID. So you can have it in the cloud, but not on the internet. Technically, you can.
I think also there's another layer below that as well. We often get asked by customers, that there's certain areas of data they don't want everybody in their organisation to see for whatever reason.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I kind of get that. Now, there's some very practical reasons for that. You may have a sales department in New York and a sales department in Oxford. Well, they don't need to see each other's customers because they're never going to talk to them. In which case, we can segment that out by business unit, okay, and then concentrate what they want to concentrate on, and vice versa. But there is sometimes sensitive information in there that for whatever you want to restrict. And again, we can layer security roles on top of that, even right down to field level security. So a particular field is not visible except by certain people. So we can layer that on top of the actual ability to actually get into the platform, and then what you can see throughout that as well. So people can focus on what they need to see. How are we doing, Ollie? You got any questions there at the moment? Anybody come up with any questions? We always like a good question to catch us out.
No, not in the Q&A box at the moment. So again, for anyone listening live, this is a great opportunity. If anything that's been mentioned today rings a bell, you've got a query about, or want to know more, or even about how partner to partner play works, or maybe you've listened to some previous the Cloud 2020 webinar series that the three of us have been on, that anything that's come out from mail, it's rung a bell that you've had a conversation, and maybe Dynamics hasn't previously been your area of focus. And you can see from the messaging that Microsoft gave at Inspire that, as I mentioned earlier, the BizApps arena, the third cloud, is a real focus for Microsoft moving forward. Any questions, please either put them in the Q&A box, or as I touched on earlier, the easiest way to interact with Cloud 2020 is to speak and reach out to your IntY account manager, and they will arrange an initial call with Ian, Wendy, and the rest of the team at Cloud 2020. And that's where the discussion starts, because there's a whole conversation about what can be done. There's a whole conversation about how partner to partner works, and it's really interesting. And it's as I've mentioned at the very start of this webinar, it's a fantastic opportunity for you as a partner to have another revenue and margin stream coming into the business, and also it's another solution to be able to take out to your existing customer base. If your customer base at the moment has 365, your customer base has some Azure, there is another cloud there that Microsoft offer with some fantastic products and services, Dynamics 365, the Power Platform, that we can have conversations to your base about.
Yeah, I think actually that point is really powerful, although, because you guys are going to be very close to your customers, so often you'll see where they're having challenges with their business application somewhere, or you can see that they've certainly got growth coming on and perhaps they're not managing. There's usually some trigger point that wakes them up to saying, hang on, we need to think about this. I mean, you have to bear in mind that often that makes them very busy people, so we have to work really closely alongside them, because we have to work with them to make this happen. We have to understand their business, we have to understand the pain points, have to make sure we're delivering something that's going to give them some impact, and that can only happen if they work right alongside us. I mean, that's so important. And also the bit that Wendy's very, very keen on is the whole user adoption piece, which is about bringing the team with you from the organization, because if they don't get it, if they're not signed up, if they've not been able to contribute to the approach, then they won't use it, and therefore everyone's wasting a lot of time and money. So that's important. But if you think that if you're putting in your Azure pieces, you're managing their third-party apps for them, their legacy apps, you've got their Teams and their Exchange all running sweet and that, anything else probably has got something in it that we can help with. Anything else, finance, HR, personnel, marketing, whatever, there's probably something else in there that we can support you with, giving some benefit to your customer. So don't hesitate to get hold of your account manager at IntY, get them to give us a bell, and let's have a conversation. We do really like to lead on where we can offer some real benefit to your customers, give them value add. It's not just about selling a few licenses, it's very much around giving them value add, because what we find then is that once we get the first piece in, maybe it's sales to get some money on the bottom line, then very often it'll lead into, okay, now we've got a support desk, can we bring that in? What about marketing? Let's get some real marketing. Yeah, okay, let's bring marketing in. And you'll often see that once we've got in, we then bring in further contracts and further working down the line. So it's well worth getting that first conversation going.
I think also, Ian, you mentioned briefly there around Teams.
Yeah.
And we're going to see much less differentiation in the future between something like Microsoft 365, Modern Workplace, Azure, and Power Platform. We are going to see much more out of the box integration with those parts of Microsoft's offering. And now we can see that Teams is my prediction is Teams going to replace Outlook. Essentially, we're all going to work from
prediction there.
I know.
Yeah,
I've been right. I've been right, and I've been wrong before. But I think that the fact is that is where the bulk of the money is going into. The development is going into Teams, and it was announced that you can now make Dynamics 365 data visible in Teams without having to license that external user to share some information with. So that whole world is set to bring about us all moving slightly closer together. So to do that, we need to build relationships built on trust with the partners that are out there that are delivering Teams. And we need to be able to then offer them a practice that will deliver Dynamics 365, the Power Platform, Power Apps, without them having to increase their headcount or do all those awful exams. That's as we know, Ian, we're doing some of those awful exams ourselves at the moment. We're both going, is that what they used to call an entity?
I think the Teams thing is really fascinating. I agree with you, and I wouldn't mock your prediction. Actually, there's a company very similar to ours that where I remember some a while ago, the CEO said, right, next week there will be no internal emails, none whatsoever. As it was, they're all dispersed workforce anyway. There's no office, and he banned emails internally for a week. The only time we allowed to send an email was if it had to go to a customer and they couldn't interact on Teams and they needed something in that email. At the end of that week, they never went back. It was absolutely incredible how that thing. Now in Dynamics, well, until recently, we've had the ability, let's say you're onboarding a new account and you want to bring the CFO in and perhaps legal or something, you could click the button that said collaborate, and that would create a team, and you could invite those people to work with you collaboratively on that. If they had a license in Teams, they could see the data in Dynamics and vice versa. If not, they were just part of that conversation. The massive change that you mentioned just now, Wendy, that was announced at Inspire a couple of weeks ago, was that in the conversation pane in Dynamics now, as well as recording phone calls and emails and notes, you can actually just have a conversation. You can create a Teams conversation directly in there. And I could bring Ollie into that conversation who's in my organisation. Say, Ollie, you need to jump on this call with me. I've got this great opportunity, but they need your expertise because we've got some Azure going on, or whatever. So that Teams integration now is phenomenal. It makes it the channel for everything to happen on. So taking it to the next level in Dynamics is massive step forward.
Absolutely.
Guys, thank you. There's been a lot to digest today, and as always, I hope partners who are either listening to this live or who are listening back to this at a later date have found a lot of interesting discussion points, because it's about uncovering new opportunities essentially, and how we can do that. And the journey from on-prem to the cloud is one that all of our partners will be having conversations to customers around digital transformation journeys. And Cloud 2020 are one of our vendors here at IntY who are able to offer this journey through a partner-to-partner play through Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. And it, as I mentioned earlier, does present a huge opportunity for additional revenue and additional margin for partners. You'll see on screen now, you can connect with Cloud 2020 on LinkedIn and through their YouTube channel. But as an IntY partner, please reach out to your IntY account manager and get them to set up an engagement with Cloud 2020. And we can have a chat about what customer opportunities you're working on at the moment, and whether you've sold 365 into a customer and they have, through other conversations around how their business works, we know that they have an on-premise, for example, CRM platform, then we can have these conversations about moving them into the cloud and through Dynamics 365. So big
also,
thank
actually,
you.
just a quick one. Don't forget other CRM platforms as well. This is a great opportunity to look at people with Salesforce and various other platforms out there and make that move. Sorry, button.
Great point, Ian. Great point. Brilliant. I love the fact as well. We've covered off some points from Inspire as well. So again, for any partners who weren't able to listen to any of the Inspire messaging, hopefully you caught some of the updates on IntY social channels. I know we were doing a live social feed throughout Inspire. We will have some more updates as well coming about Inspire over the next few weeks as well. Let me take this opportunity to say once again a huge thank you to both Ian and Wendy, and for everything that Cloud 2020 do to all of our partners. I really enjoy these interactive conversational webinars that we have, and the feedback I've had from partners so far is that you guys find these valuable too. So thanks, Ian. Thanks, Wendy. Stay safe, everyone, and look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.